And here we are. Welcome back to the Redshirt Sophomore, where we never sit out. We're your hosts, MD and CD. What is going on today? Today we're doing something a little different. Today we're going to be talking about who who are college football's next stars, right? Like it's hard to sometimes see that through the lens of a normal fan that comes around, once every August through December, August through January. But we have some names for you. If you guys like this a lot, make sure you like the video. If you like the content, like the video. It's that easy. And also, make sure you let us know in the comments. Let us know in the comments. Hey, I want to see more of these. Hey, who are some more sleepers? Now, these guys are not sleepers by any means. These are not sleepers by any stretch of the imagination. But these are some young guys, maybe some guys that haven't gotten as much playing time or did kind of break through last season that, you know what? We're here and we're going to talk about them and we're going to make sure you guys are looking out for their names come next August and September. CD, what's up with you, dude?
Nothing much. Excited to be back. Yeah, these guys we're really excited about. I know maybe you've heard of most of them, but some of them obviously we're hoping to educate you guys on. These guys have big time talent, big time potential, and are playmakers and massive, you know, impact players, X factor players for these respective teams in their conference races. You also look at the NFL draft right now, you have a ton of star-studded college football players leaving the sport, going to the NFL. But hey, these guys are next, and we'll be just fine because of these guys. And obviously, if you like this content, we'll get some more down. We have some other names that we couldn't get in all in one video, and we'd love to talk about those guys as well. But yeah, you look at Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Marvin Harrison, Roma Dunze, Malik Neighbors, all the Bama defenders. Like it's a lot of guys leaving, but Brock Bowers, another one. But there's still some guys left in that maybe you don't know about yet, but hey, come September and October, especially November in conference races, you'll know about.
And the production's got to come from somewhere, right? It's got to come from somewhere. People are leaving. Like even if you take all of college football's most productive players from last year, right? You just put them in the NFL or just graduated and whatever. The production is still going to come from somewhere, right? No matter what, it's going to come from somewhere. So our mission is to find that. Now, if you are a big college football fan, you are going to know a lot of these names because these were all, I believe, looking at these names, these are all very highly recruited players out of high school. So if you're a recruiting guy and you like following that a lot, you are going to recognize every single one of these players. Every single one of these
It
players.
goes to show you how important recruiting is and exactly why you don't take the offseason off because nowadays with the moved up calendar, June and July and August are massive recruiting months and that make or break some of these classes and get guys like these to sign or at least lay the groundwork for that relationship to sign come December and February.
Absolutely. And make sure you guys, if you're watching this, give us a comment. Like, what do you guys want to see? Like we like doing what we're doing, but are there specific things that you have questions on that you want answered? You can email us at the redshirtsophomore@gmail.com. You can DM us on Twitter at the redshirtsoft. You can do both of those things. And we're hoping to get to some mailbag questions here pretty soon. And we'll uh we'll open up the floor to you guys, is what we're saying. So with that being said, CD, you ready to talk about these future college football stars?
Let's get into it.
Let's talk about Jackson Arnold. I mean, it is no secret. I mean, look, even your casual college football fan probably knows who Jackson Arnold is if they watched a lick of bowl game football because one of the better bowl games included this quarterback, Jackson Arnold, out of high school, man. He was a 4-star? He was pretty average rated 4-star, right? He was highly rated, but he just skyrocketed after his Elite 11 showing out. He played at 6A, Division two in the state of Texas. If you didn't know, that's the highest division that there is in Texas. He also played at Denton Guyer, which is just known for just breeding talent. And you're looking at elite production in an elite competition. And so far, I think he's done fine. And people are going to point at that Arizona game. You're going to pull up all of his interceptions that he threw in that game. Yeah, okay. He was a true freshman that was going against one, a very good defense, Johnny Nansen defense right there. And two, it was just They did not have the same roster that they had throughout the season. However, you're changing up offense coordinators this year. No more Jeff Levy. You're looking at Seth Luttrell getting an internal promotion, former head coach at North Texas. If you remember him at North Texas, though, Seth Luttrell, I thought he did fine offensively in those years. Austin Uni, um, Jeff Wilson, you're an NFL guy. Jeff Wilson was on those teams, absolutely racking up yards over there. So I believe in Jackson Darnold. I am all in on Jackson Darnold, and you could not be coming to this team at a better time. Look, let's be real. Dylan Gabriel was fine at Oklahoma, was he not?
He was great. I mean, he had almost 7,000 yards the past 2 years, 55 touchdowns. He was awesome. Really, really good player. A lot different than Jackson Arnold, though, if you ask me, in their playing styles.
Absolutely. Yeah, Oklahoma's past year was number fifth or third overall in points per game scored, third in total yards per game, fifth in the country in passing yards per game. Now, however, yeah, and but yeah, yards per attempt, they were ninth in the country, top 20th in yards per completion, eighth in completion percentage. And it's not like they were throwing the ball, much more than anyone else. I mean, they 31st most pass attempts per game, but that's also because of their pace. It's their pace. They average 76 plays on offense per game. That's absurd. That is absurd pace. So a lot of that passing production did come from pace for sure. And the offense will change up a little bit. It'll change up a little bit with Seth Luttrell in there, but I I like Seth Luttrell in there. I think he'll be fine. I think Jackson Arnold's a stud. He's got the size that I don't think Dylan Gabriel has. I think he's a better arm talent than Dylan Gabriel. And you know what? Is it crazy to say that he's just as athletic? Or is that a little criminal?
He's a damn good athlete. You saw him make some plays in that bowl game. And what's nice about him is he has that size, and I guess it helps you a little bit with durability and feeling like, hey, it's 3rd and 2. I can run a read option. I can get, QB sneak here and there with Jackson Arnold. Things he can do a little bit differently that Dylan Gabriel can. Not only with his arm pushing the ball down the field, which you saw in that bowl game, a beautiful strike to Brendan Thompson, down the stride, down the field versus Dylan Gabriel liking to nitpick the middle of the field, do his stuff, work surgically, which is great and obviously very impressive in its own right. But you're bringing a guy like Deion Burks, right? You have Andrew Anthony, Nick Anderson, Jaleel Farouk, obviously Brendan Thompson mentioned earlier, deep threat. Like you have guys and athletes, you want to push the ball down the field, right? And Jackson Arnold obviously is a guy you invested in high school. And it's unfortunate. Nowadays, you can't keep 2 elite quarterbacks for the most part. It's hard. You have to pick one if you're the Oklahoma boosters or if you're the Oklahoma staff, and you have to be like, okay, Jackson Arnold's our guy for 2 years, right? And obviously, there's going to be some growing pains this year for sure. But I mean, what's not to like? I mean, the upsize is so tantalizing. You saw his meteoric rise, like you mentioned, in high school because of his ability to push the ball down the field and make big time throws, big time plays. He was a Gatorade National Player of the Year. Yeah, he's awesome. And to be honest, if you ask me, in that star-studded 2023 class of quarterbacks, right, with Arch Manning and Dante Moore and all those guys, Nico, who's also very good, Aiden Childs as well. Jackson Arnold's the guy who I feel the best about right now after 1 year. Now you don't know; it's still early, but I don't think that's crazy to say. In a very elite class of quarterbacks, Oklahoma has their guy moving to the SEC for at least 2 more years. That cannot be understated enough.
I agree. I agree. He is a dude, man. He's a dude. And I'm trying to remember like what his recruiting looked like. Maybe you can help me out on this, but it felt like he committed kind of early, right? To Oklahoma.
Yeah, he didn't have a ton going. I mean, obviously he had stuff going on. Oklahoma was looking at him. Okay, that's a premier program. But it wasn't until the very end, those last couple updates in that cycle where he boomed up in the rankings. Right. He had offers from just about everybody else. Of course he did. But yeah, it was really Oklahoma. Alabama was in a little bit, but they also had their other quarterback. And 2 guys they liked, Dylan Loner and our guy Eli Holstein. But yeah, other than that, it was kind of just Oklahoma. They got him on an early, great evaluation by them. Jeff Levy actually was the primary recruiter, and like you mentioned, yeah, he came in ready to play physically, but mentally because of that top competition he played, and obviously you saw it. It's hard. It's hard to get thrust into a bowl game because all year you were taking twos, you were taking reps with the twos, right, or even the threes when you first got there. back in the summer. So the to me, yeah, I look at the bowl game and I see a ton of promise, a ton of promise. 361 yards, 2 touchdowns, 11 rushes on the ground as well. I can't be more excited about Jackson Arnold and what he can do in Oklahoma. Let me ask you this. What does a breakout for Jackson Arnold mean for Oklahoma in their SEC plays and their just overall momentum going forward with Brent Venables?
It would be monumental. It would be monumental. One, you're headed into the SEC, like you already mentioned. It's not going to be an easy slate. It's not going to be an easy slate. I mean, I don't know. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but Oklahoma in the last decade had to have at least won, what, 6 of the last 8 Big 12 titles? At least.
They've been
Has to be
really home
somewhere
in.
around there. So, has to be somewhere around that number. They were buzzing in that conference. It's going to be a little different. You had that blip when Lincoln Riley left, but it looks like Oklahoma's kind of turning it around right now. If Jackson Arnold pops off the way that I think he can, he will not only be really good for Oklahoma, but he will be one of the best players in the entire country if he pops off the way that people think that he can pop off. Because he's got that athleticism, that size, that arm talent now around him. Like he's got better receivers next year. Then I mean, Dylan Gabriel was throwing to Drake Stoops. No disrespect to Drake Stoops, but Deion Burks is a dude,
Yeah.
and Nick Anderson will be healthy for the full season, right? And you'll get to actually see him with 12 games of sample size. I I like Gavin Sawchuk going to be taking over the reins there, running back who's. I mean, they were just waiting on him, right, to take those reins. It's just been a waiting game with him. He's that talented. It's it would mean a lot. It would mean a lot, and it means that they could. I don't know that he's competing for an SEC championship this year. He could. If he's that good, they could. But uh, just a trend in the right direction for Oklahoma would mean a lot, especially going into the SEC.
Well, he also gives you a chance to win every single football game you're playing him just because of how good he can play. And no matter what the talent gap is, and trust me, I love the way Brent Venables has recruited and developed and built that roster, changed it. He had to change it completely from when Lincoln Riley left it at. First of all, Lincoln Riley kind of decimated it, not with the transfer portal, but also he had to really recruit inside out. I love what he's done so far, but there's still a year or two away from really competing with the big boys in the SEC. But you have Jackson Arnold. You have to play Tennessee. You have to play Texas, obviously, in the Cotton Bowl. You got to play Ole Miss. You got to play Missouri, Alabama, LSU, all teams with darn good quarterbacks in the SEC and defenses. And you have to, well, I guess not LSU, but you have to really, really get after them and compete and go body blow for body blow in October, November with these really good teams. Yeah, Jackson Arnold's the guy. And I know it's tough to see Dylan Gabriel walk out the door, and I'm sure he's going to do great things for Oregon. He fits that system super, super well. I love, getting rid of Bo Nix for the NFL draft, and obviously inserting in Dylan Gabriel now, and then the long term Dante Moore. Awesome for Oregon, but listen, Oklahoma's in a great spot too.
Let's talk about Malachi Coleman. Now, this one is a name that, not everyone here has probably heard, although he is top 100 player coming out of high school. He was a true freshman last year. Didn't get a ton of action on the field. Only had 8 receptions for 139 yards and a touchdown. Um, he came up huge in that Northwestern scary game with that big 44-yard touchdown. Malachi Coleman is kind of a freak athletically, right? He's 6'4", 190 pounds. I mean, he runs a sub 11 100-meter dash, I believe 10.46 if I'm looking at that right, as a PR. That's
Oh,
oh, that is nice. That is nice. Here's the thing though about Malachi Coleman is that Matt Rule, you brought in a couple transfer receivers in the portal, and not just any random transfer portal receivers. You got Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nair. Jamal Banks, very effective receiver for Wake Forest this past season. And then Isaiah Nair, who originally played at Wyoming, transfers into Texas. You thought he was going to have a big impact, gets hurt, and now he's over here. He's 6'3", 215 pounds. Jamal Banks, I believe, is a pretty big body receiver. I'm looking at 6'4", 205. So it feels like Malachi Coleman and those other guys kind of fill that same role. It's like, can Malachi Coleman get that playing time this year, and I think that's important too, especially for the growth of Dylan Raiola, new five-star quarterback coming into Nebraska right there. If he can develop that connection early with Malachi Coleman and get that trust, like they'll have a year or two, maybe three, to get that connection going and maybe start uh pulling out producing a better offense than I think Nebraska has shown us these last couple of years, right?
Oh yeah, I mean Henrik Harburg, with all due respect to him, was awful throwing the football under 50% completion. Obviously, Jeff Sims not much better. Chuba Purdy struggled as well. It was a terrible outing. There's been a absolute emphasis. You change up your offensive staff in terms of who's calling plays. No more Scott Satterfield, and that's yes, Scott Satterfield, right? Yeah,
Yes. No,
sure.
sorry,
Yeah,
Marcus
Scott,
Satterfield. Marcus
Marcus
Satterfield.
Satterfield. Thank you.
Scott Satterfield's
I
over
know I
at
got there.
Cincinnati.
Yeah, both guys. Then whatever. Anyways, Malachi Coleman comes in. You bring in, like you mentioned, the wide receivers. You invest in a guy like Dylan Raiola. To me, there's an absolute emphasis on being able to be explosive in this Big Ten. You look at their schedule next year. I mean, you got to play at Ohio State, UCLA, USC, Wisconsin, Iowa. That's your last 5 games to finish the season. You don't want to happen again this year, where you're in a position to go to a bowl game, but also to win the Big Ten West, and you just fall apart, right? Because you can't push the ball on the field at all. When you get into conference play, this year, I think Nebraska, you've seen that year two leap from Matt Rule, and I think Malachi Coleman's going to see a similar one as well. He's too good an athlete to keep out the field. I know there's a lot of wide receivers in the room. I love the bodies in there. I love them. I really like what they've done there in that room. But to me, I had to have him on this list because of just how freaky he is. It was a huge win for Matt Rule and his staff, right? Like last year, Matt Rule came in late in the cycle and put up emphasis and a priority on Malachi Coleman and said, hey, we need to keep you in state. He was a top player in Nebraska, and he did it. And you saw some good things happen. 6 stars throughout the year, eventually got going, and made some big time plays in a very limited passing offense. Yeah.
Very
And to be
limited.
honest, and that's even being generous. A good passing game with Nebraska, and they're going to be a very, very dangerous team to play come the Big Ten schedule when they get there. And I think Malachi Coleman, among others in that transport, but he's going to be the one that I think is really going to break out for Nebraska.
Yeah, I mean, look, Nebraska only threw, what is that, about 250 passes or completed about, yeah, they only threw about 250 passes. They only completed like 130. That is desperately low. I mean, and they had one. What's funny is that they only passed the ball 38% of the time, which by the way is 127th in the country. If you didn't know that. They completed only 52% of those passes, and they threw 1.3 interceptions per game for good for 123rd. So in an offense where you were throwing like at a bottom 7, bottom 6 rate, you were throwing interceptions at a top 10 rate. Pretty
It was
absurd. I mean,
bad.
Jeff Sims had 6, Heinrich Harburg had 7, Chuba Purdy had 3. And none of those guys finished with more passing touchdowns than interceptions. They threw 16 touchdowns total to 10, or sorry, 16 interceptions to 10 touchdowns. It was abysmal. Get Dylan Raiola in there. And also the receivers kind of disappointed. Like Billy Kemp, I thought was going to be more explosive. And I didn't really see it a lot. Now it was tough getting them the ball, and they didn't really throw the ball that much. And I think Matt Rule figured out pretty early on that he was going to have to just run the ball in order to be successful with this team. Figure that out pretty early, be physical. But the thing is that this team is young and it is physical. And if you can get guys like Malachi Coleman going, who knows what this offense is going to be able to accomplish in the next couple of years. And it seems like a destination for wide receivers. Again, Jamal Banks, very good wide receiver, productive at Wake Forest. And Isaiah Nair, we know that he was productive at Wyoming. He just couldn't crack that lineup at Texas, which we know was one of the best receiving rooms in the entire country last year. So it is going to be kind of crazy having Malachi Coleman be a third option in this offense. It is nice. It would be nice to see him do really well, though, right? The hometown hero is from Lincoln, Nebraska. It would be fantastic if he got going. I think he can. I absolutely think he can. I think I don't know. What do you think Malachi Coleman's production looks like this year? Or what's a good season for Malachi Coleman?
I mean, if he's above 500, 600 yards and he's making big time explosive plays, that's a massive leap from year one to year two, and also just in general. Like if your second and third option is putting up those kinds of numbers, that's awesome. That's really awesome. And the thing I love about it and why I believe it's going to happen, yes, Dylan Raio's a young guy. I get that. They're going to run the football very, very well. They always do. Their O line is improving under Matt Rule. They're bringing back Gabe Irwin, some Ramir Johnson, some damn physical running backs. But Dylan Raiola, say what you want about him, but first of all, he takes care of the football, which Matt Rule is going to like and trust him in big time plays. But also off play action pass and throwing the deep ball, he is lethal. He is very, very, very good. And that's where a guy like Malachi Coleman can stretch defense with his length, but his speed. You mentioned that track time early in the season. It shows up on tape. It showed up last year a little bit. He had a big time play, right? Like you mentioned. So I like it. To me, Malachi Coleman's a guy that when Nebraska got him, I was like, oh crap. And I'm a Minnesota fan, right there, just north of Lincoln. So I was definitely worried, to see what Matt Rule is building. They're already get a guy like him to come in and buy into that culture and into that offense. And you didn't see it in year one, but it wasn't his fault necessarily. He was still getting acclimated, but also the QB play was terrible. The scheme was terrible, right? Everything, nothing worked out for a deep threat like that to be able to use a guy like him. And this is where I think this new offense can really take advantage of that.
Let's talk about our next player. We just talked about, kind of a freak athlete. Let's get even freakier. Let's talk about Nick Harbor. I mean, he's over at South Carolina, and it's like, well, what position do you want him to play? He's playing wide receiver for them. His size, though, he is 6'5", 241 pounds. And you're like, oh, that sounds like, Johnny Wilson. He's 6'7". Johnny Wilson's like about 240 pounds. You're like, oh, okay, so he's a big body guy. Probably doesn't get a lot of separation, whatever. This man at 6'5", 241 pounds ran a 10-2-8 100-yard or 100-meter dash. That is absurd. That's absurd. He's got great footwork. His dad used to play for the U.S. national soccer team. He's a freak athlete, and it is a shock to me that he did not get used for. I mean, like his comps are like I'm looking at Brian Doan's scouting report from high school. His comp was Kyle Pitts, right? But instead of Kyle Pitts playing tight end, it's just as if Kyle Pitts just played X receiver, you know. So he is absolutely absurd. And what's going to be interesting, you're not going to have the same quarterback that you did last year, right? Spencer Rattler, I thought was a very good quarterback. People might disagree with that, but for what he had on the offensive line, I thought he was fantastic. He was making great throws. And it's going to be very, very different. Very, very, very different. You got Lenore Sellers, who redshirt freshman that I believe that staff is pretty high on, but I haven't seen him play at all. Robbie Ashford's there in that quarterback room. We've seen him play. Not sure if he's going to be the guy that gets Nick Harbor the ball. And then Davis Beville. He was a guy at Pitt, if you don't remember, and Oklahoma before that. We've seen him in some limited action. He was not super effective as well. So it's like, who's going to get him the ball? Like you're really hoping that Lenore Sellers picks up the slack. But what's nice too about Nick Harbor is that you got other receivers there that are pretty good. Gage Larverdane coming from Miami, Ohio. He was their most productive receiver there. Very good. Jared Brown. We've talked about several times on the show from Coastal Carolina. Very,
We
very
love
good.
Jared Brown.
Very talented, very athletic receiver. He's probably going to be profiling more as like the slot there. And Larverdame and Huggins Bruce will probably be playing outside receivers with Nick Harbor. But I Nick Harbor, you guys should know who this person is. Even if like they can't find a way to get him the football, like going into the season after this next one, like he's still going to be getting NFL talk, like because he profiles as that kind of guy. You're also no more Xavier Legette either, so
And Juice Wells.
and
For
Juice Wells.
for what that's worth.
There's catches to go around, so I'll let you talk about him a little bit.
Yeah, Nick Harbor, you're gonna see a trend here with some of these players and predicting breakout guys. Like you look at elite athletes, right? And he is absolutely picture perfect body of elite athlete. You think about, a creative player, right, in NFL or Madden or even the new NCAA game. This would be him, right? 6'5", 240. built like a DN, which he played in high school, and that was a position like, hey, he's going to play DN, he's going to play tight end, or he's going to play wide receiver. That's a good problem to have, and if you can run like that, you mentioned his footwork is fantastic. His hands is getting better. He really started coming on along throughout the season. To me, that's what I love. You build some momentum throughout the season, and obviously you're running track right now. You're doing your thing. You're killing it in the indoor times right now, which is awesome. Staying in good shape. But yeah, come summer and fall camp, I really believe in Nick Carver to make some strides. I love the wide receivers they're bringing in, but also they're also all transfers. It's a new system, right? And the Norris Sellers guy. Yes, you mentioned the uncertainty there. I happen to like him a lot. We'll see if it happens in year one with him. But regardless, though, I think Nick Carver is good enough to get the ball right in his hands and let him do things, whether it's on crossing routes and let him get up some speed and go, or double moves, go deep, take the top off a guy, or even anything he can do to get the ball in his hands because he is special, right? You mentioned all those guys gone, Leggett, Juice Wells. Someone has to step up, and I think it'll be Nick Carver, right? I don't know. I think a breakout season for Nick Harbor, not only is that going to mean massive implications for him in the draft and buzz, right, for 2025, but also, I mean, they struggled offensively last year outside of Xavier Leggett. And if you bring in some guys like Jared Brown that we like, and Nick Harbor steps up, Raheem Sanders, a running back, Lenore Sellers gets going, that would be awesome. And hey, make no mistake, Shane Beamer, they've had some good years, but last year was a real down year. And it was a real down year. You have to get going, ramp it back up, and start treading in that direction that you were just a year ago.
Yeah, and I believe Nick Harbor can be a very good blocker too, as well. I'm looking more for down to down consistency with that. But like once he gets there, and I know he's got athletic hands, right? He's a receiver, and he also played D end in high school. Like he's got versatile, strong punch hands. If he can just figure that out, like and slow down, because it's different, blocking high school defensive ends than like blocking college cornerbacks. It's a completely different game, right? Or even college linebackers. Once that happens, though, like it feels like he's the kind of guy, if he gets your hands on you, it's absolutely over. It's absolutely over. So I am super excited to see what Nick Harvard can do these next couple years. He's going to explode, if not on the field, because quarterbacks can't get on the ball. It will be up NFL draft boards. Let's talk about Malik Muhammad. Man, oh man, Malik Muhammad is a stud. We knew it coming out of high school too. Was he a high 4-star? He was a top 100 player, I believe. He dude, he made every single All-American freshman team that could have possibly been made, and didn't even start at the beginning of the year. That is wild. He's so versatile and so talented. He blankets people. He's good in zone. He does everything, man. And look, as an A&M fan, when he decommitted, I was heartbroken. That was a guy that I was like, okay, that's a day one starter, right? And then we ended up getting two other DBs in that recruiting class, but neither were the starting caliber that Malik Muhammad is, and he's so good. You got any thoughts on Malik Muhammad?
Yeah, he is a monster. We were kind of wondering all year, like Texas's defensive backs are struggling. And every time I saw Malik Muhammad play, I guess obviously you saw some freshman woes and some struggles, but that talent was there, obviously. And you started to see him get more acclimated and get more playing time down there, which is part of the reason why he's on this list. He started the last two games, by the way, they're the most important games, the Big 12 championship game and the semifinal against Washington, and held his own, right? Yeah, Malik Muhammad to me is awesome. It is awesome. That defensive back and that defensive team in general loses a lot, and to have a guy like him coming back for his year two is big time. Is big time. You can pencil him right there at the boundary corner position and figure everything else out, right? Because he's going to be there. He's going to be a stud for the next 2 years on Texas.
Yeah, he had one of the most he ended up having one of the highest snap counts of all the DBs on Texas. He also had one of the highest, not just defensive grades for DBs, but one of the highest defensive grades of any of Texas's defensive players. And you're looking at guys like Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy, right? Those were the guys that were Gavin Holmes. Like those were the guys that were ahead of him in terms of PFF grades, and Gavin Holmes marginally, like marginally. Malik Muhammad is a stud. Enough said. You're gonna see him on Sundays. Okay, just be careful if you're an SEC team, right? And you have a young quarterback. Be careful when you guys are playing Texas because Malik Muhammad is going to always be in the area. He's gonna always be there. He's gonna always be there. I gotta figure out like what rank he was actually coming out of high school, but I know for a fact he was like a top 100 player. He was very good. Came out of the
He,
state of Texas. Are you looking at it right now?
yeah, yeah. So he was, I mean, it depends where you look, but obviously 24/7 had him as 74th player. The composite was even higher, 45. Right? He was right on the edge of a 5-star guy, number 4 cornerback in the country just a year ago in the class of 2023, behind guys like Komani McLean, Desiree, who classified, and AJ Harris. Right. Yeah. Muhammad, to me, and yeah, if you ask any of those guys, Malik Muhammad was a guy that we loved, right? But also, like, after year one, he's a damn good player. That's the guy you feel great about, in terms of corners going into year two, which is a hard position to get thrown into in major college football.
Yeah, I mean, how many like even like the 5-star like elite talents, right? Like how many of them do you actually see like go into year one as a freshman and be really, really, really effective? Like Kool-Aid
You don't.
McKinstry, maybe. You got because Minka
He,
Fitzpatrick wasn't even like a pure outside boundary corner
he
either.
played star. Hey, Travis Hunter, right? But I mean, he's very, very he's special in his own right. But guys like Damani Jackson, Will Johnson was actually pretty darn good. But Damani Jackson struggled early. Denver Harris, you saw stuff going on outside. Toriano Pride figuring out at Missouri right now. Yeah, this is super, super impressive. We love his game. And obviously, going in the SEC, I had to keep saying it, but like, you're going to need that against some darn good receiving cores you're going to play against, right? Mississippi State loves to throw the ball with Jeff Lebby. Oklahoma with Jackson Arnold, who we talked about earlier. Georgia, right? Obviously, they're bringing in a host of wide receivers, and Carson Beck returns. Florida with DJ Lagway slash Graham Mertz and what they want to do offensively. Obviously, A&M to end the year with Connor Wigman and a couple damn good receivers. Plus the postseason. If you're Texas, the expectation right now is the postseason. And yeah, and you look at the teams that have won it recently, you look at their defensive backs, right? They have been damn good defensive backfields. And Andrew Makuba you bring in from Clemson, step one, fill a need there. But Malik Muhammad, you can pencil him in, pen him in right there at cornerback.
Yeah, I'm looking at the 2023 recruiting class, like top cornerback prospects. I mean, Cormani McLean, he didn't start. AJ Harris AJ Harris got playing time though, right?
Not as much as he, no,
That
not,
secondary was elite though, but he's a good football
yeah,
player, right?
yeah.
Des Ricks did not find the field either. Jakeem Jackson was Jalil Hurley or Jalil Hurley, um, Calvin Simpson Hunt. I mean, like you're looking at these guys, Brevian Rogers, Dalen Austin, uh, Javon Thomas. I mean, Malik Muhammad has been productive, more productive than all of them. So
Well,
that just say it again.
and if it did play, right, they struggled, right? And you saw those freshman woes, which you saw with Muhammad at times, obviously. But the fact that they put him in there, right? And we talked about it, right? When we were doing our Sugar Bowl breakdown, we're like, let's see Malik Muhammad in there. Let's throw him in there against. And now, yes, did Michael Penix go dummy? Yeah. But hey, those Texas corners are right there, hanging all over Doomsday all the time, and Polk
Yeah.
and everyone else. And they just made plays. But regardless, so I love that for Muhammad, building momentum and all that.
Let's talk about Aiden Childs. Quarterback that was recruited, a highly rated quarterback, by the way. I don't know if this is the highest rated quarterback that has ever played for Oregon State coming out of high school, but he came out of there and he was already he competed for the job against DJU legitimately and beat out Ben Goldbranson, who was a starter at Oregon State the year before. DJU had legitimate competition. They had designated possessions where they played Aiden Childs like throughout the season. Like you saw him like just come in there in the games and he actually did pretty well. Very athletic, really good arm. There are not enough folks high enough on Aiden Childs. He's a spectacular player. It'll be interesting though. We get to see an entire full season, a full workload for Aiden Childs on a team that is less talented than the one that he would have been playing at for Oregon State. Follows Jonathan Smith. Of course, Jonathan Smith gets the Michigan State job after leaving Oregon State, which, stirred up its own fries there in Oregon State, over there in Corvallis. But regardless, Aiden Childs is there now, and he's got a shot. It's the Big Ten. It's a it's a tough ball game. It's a tough competition. Fortunately enough, won't be too far away from home when you got four Pac-12 teams coming over to the Big Ten. So I don't know. I mean, I think he's really good, but I'm still very uncertain about all of this. Very, very uncertain because this is not that same team that he's playing over at Oregon State. This is not the same offensive line that he played behind in practice. It's not the same offensive line that he played behind in those games. It's not going to be the same rushing attack. You're going to have a lot of the same coaching staff there helping you out, helping you acclimate you to the Big Ten. But it will be challenging, I believe. It will be challenging, but I have no doubt that Aiden Childs in the next year or two will become a very, very, very effective quarterback at the college football level.
Yeah, no, for sure. You saw the flashes as a freshman. And to take a guy as experienced and has like coveted as DJU was for that Oregon State team and how good he was at times, right? He'd be playing well and they'd bring in Aiden Child's time. Yeah, there you go, bud. And he goes in and he made some plays. You saw the Arizona game where he had that long touchdown. Super, super impressive. You mentioned he's following Jonathan Smith in that staff to Michigan State. I love it for him and his development. Continue that continuity, continue growing with that staff. And obviously, you're on an offense right now in a team that you kind of have some freedom, right? Not a ton of pressure to win right away for Childs, but also development is key for him and those wide receivers. TJ Sheffield, they're bringing from Purdue, a guy I really like, finally put together a little bit last year with Purdue. Monterey Foster comes back, Jaron Glover, Antonio Gates, all hoping to take the next step for Michigan State, and obviously Malik Carr at tight end. Who actually played pretty darn well last year. Yeah, in terms of what this means for Michigan State. First of all, yes, you mentioned like there's a reason he's a breakout guy in this list, but if you look at like the top end evaluators in our field, right, in the portal rankings, like he is super, super high up there because they understand the value he brings. Not only is he got 2 more years left of eligibility because before the NFL draft, because he's a true sophomore, but he had experience and you saw him play right away and play really, 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 really well at times and how coveted he was. And Jonathan Smith
Seven
to get him,
touchdowns, no turnovers,
yeah,
8.8 yards per attempt, which isn't great, but it'll get there. It'll get there.
for sure. For
And
sure.
dude, I think he's very, very, very good at football. I think he's very, very good. It just, again, like it's going to be different moving over to Michigan State. You're not playing behind that same offensive line at all. But I'm looking at like that quarterback, those quarterback recruiting rankings back in 2023, and you're looking at like Jaden Rashada, Avery Johnson, Austin Mack. Like he is in that tier with those guys, according to high school evaluators. But this is a good, highly rated, talented player. He is very good. He's very, very good. I like the athleticism too. That's such a plus, man. That's such a plus. We don't know how much he's going to be scrambling around back there, but it is certainly a plus to have the athleticism that he has. So, any
Well,
other
and
thoughts on Aiden Childs?
yeah, the team that's struggled to run the football like they have and struggled to protect the passer, it's nice having that mobility where you can either one add an extra number in the box for you to run the QB, but also roll him out of the pocket, get him going, cut off half the field, make sure he's got 2 reads or whatever. He just has to look at the safety and the corner there and kind of, I wouldn't say like help his development, but more so just like protect him in games where you just don't have him back there as a sitting duck waiting for Ohio State's edges to come in and just obliterate him. But yeah, in terms of what this means for him, because we love Aiden Childs, right? Is it going to translate to wins? I don't know exactly, but I do believe he's going to break out in terms of you're going to see a ton of flashes all year from Aiden Childs at the quarterback position. I mean, but if he does, like you can steal some games that you probably shouldn't win. And you're looking at a bowl game, you're looking at some big time momentum for Jonathan Smith in year one at Michigan State.
Let's go over to Bama. Let's talk about Justice Haynes. Stud. Stud? I mean, look, it's, I wouldn't say it's actually the most crowded running back room that Alabama's ever had, Like it feels like this is an opportunity for Justice Haynes to make a big jump. You got a guy like Jam Miller in there, who I think is pretty good. I know you love Jam Miller. But the reality is Justice Haynes, I mean, he's another one of those guys that Alabama went into Georgia's backyard and just picked him up. Said, "Yep, if you know what Buford High School is in Georgia, if you're a big recruiting guy, you absolutely know what that is. If you live in Georgia, you absolutely know what that is. But that is just you talk about breeding talent. 5'11", 205 pounds. Look, you saw him. If ever, I mean, I'm assuming everyone that's watching has got a chance to see Alabama play Michigan in the college football playoff game, but you saw him early in that second half, and he kind of got going. And I never understood why they never went back to him. I thought he should have gotten more time early, but man, he's a very very talented athlete, and we're gonna see. I mean, it is gonna be a different offensive line there. You're gonna have what's nice though is you get the transfer Parker Brailsford. He'll probably play center or guard for you, and you get Tyler Booker back, Elijah Pritchett. Hopefully he can take a big time step. Uh, you're not gonna have oh gosh, what's his name? He's over at Iowa now.
Caden Proctor.
Okay, you're not gonna have Caden Proctor anymore, but that doesn't mean that, or no JC Latham either, but that doesn't mean you're not going to have talent on this offensive line. So I also trust Kalen DeBoer's offense. Like they can run the ball, and we saw what they did in the second half of the year last year. It was only because of the running game that they were able to actually effectively kind of take that step forward that they needed to with their offense. Um, I think Justice Haynes could be very, very, very key breakout name to watch this year. Plus, if Jalen Monroe wins that job, how how much more open does that running attack become for Justice Haynes?
Oh, tremendously. We talked about it with Aiden Childs, right? Like adding an extra number for you, the +1, because your quarterback is a threat to run the football. You have to account for him some way. That opens up running lanes for Justice Haynes or Jalen Moreau, whoever it is running the football. Yeah, we love Justin Haynes. Obviously, we loved Roy Dell Williams. He's out in Florida State. I like Jason McClellan a lot. He's up in the NFL now. It's Justin Haynes' time. Jam Miller, you mentioned I love him. I do, but I think he's more of a third down back, move him around, elite athlete, get him in space. Justin Haynes is the guy you can get the ball 20 plus times a game and really be effective. He came in, I believe, as an early enrollee last spring and really made some waves and some lot of noise came out of the Justice Haynes group. You saw him in that spring game where he made some damn good plays, right? And that doesn't happen all the time in Alabama. And if there's some buzz around a guy like that as a freshman coming in, it's legit. And you saw it at times. And like you mentioned, that Michigan game, he came in and he gave you some real spark and some real juice, fresh legs to come in there at the end of the season. And I thought they were going to continue riding him, like you mentioned, and they didn't. I think he's going to continue that momentum, though. You mentioned Washington running the football. Dylan Johnson was such a key part for them. And a lot is made of the wide receiver group that Kalen DeBoer can assemble and how Ryan Grubb took advantage of them. But Dylan Johnson was a 1,000-yard rusher as well. That he was massive, and Justice Haynes, a guy that can really take advantage of that as well. You mentioned obviously if it is Milrow, right, it helps them in the run game as well. But also they're going to be breaking in a quarterback in a new system regardlessly. So having an effective running back and running game is key for them and DeBoer to really lean on. And also without Ryan Grubb as well. You got Nick Sheridan coming in at OC. DeBoer is going to have a hand in play calling probably. But regardless, having a guy that you can just lean on, hey, you're getting the ball 22 times a game and everything else we'll figure out is awesome, is massive, especially in the SEC. Now, is the depth there in that room? We'll see how big of a leap that Richard Young takes, behind Justice Haynes. But regardless, though, I love the way he's getting after it this offseason, and I think he could really break out. And obviously, Buford just pumps out talent. You know he was going to be ready to play day one, and he was. And this is year two. We think a real bump is coming for him.
Absolutely. Plus, like I their defense was elite last year, right? But you lose Chris Braswell, you lose Dallas Turner, you lose Terry Arnold, you lose Kool-Aid McKinstry. I mean, luckily you return Deontay Lawson, so some continuity in the linebacker room. You return Tim Smith, you get Shaheem Otis, you get Malachi Moore, you get Damani Jackson in the transfer portal. But we'll see what that defense looks like. We'll see what it looks like. It should be, I still think it'll be pretty good. But it might be nice at times for them to control the football. And how can you do that? You can run the ball effectively. Let's talk about David Stone. David Stone is an interesting one because, well, he had a really interesting recruitment, if you remember, right? He was Oklahoma, right? Michigan State thought he had him. Mel Tucker took him in his cool car, whatever. But Mel Tucker is no longer at Michigan State, which means David Stone headed to Oklahoma. And he's going to have a chance, I believe, to learn behind some serious experience there at Oklahoma. Where I'm looking at their interior defensive line. Was that five redshirt seniors, four redshirt seniors for them? CD.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, David Stone he's a very good talent. He absolutely balled out in the Polynesian Bowl. He balled out in the All American game in those practices as well. Everything coming out on this guy, just he's from IMG, right? Very clearly, there's some talent that's produced from the IMG Academy. He he's a good football player, guys. All right. He's a good football player. Will he play very early? I think he has a chance to be uh, a big time powerhouse for Oklahoma early on. But I do think it's beneficial that he's got a lot of experience there. One, to kind of keep him grounded. Two, to like kind of teach him like, hey, like this is how it works, right? Like this is how college football works because it's different. It's different. And I don't think he early enrolled, if I'm correct here. Uh, maybe we can check into that. But if you're telling this kid, if he's just arriving in the summer, right? I think like that senior experience, that leadership around him is going to be very, very, very crucial for his development.
For sure. And also guys that not only when he's playing alongside him, they can really get at the quarterback as well, or at least draw attention away. Those guys are big body guys, 320, 330 dudes. You're looking at Dejon Terry and Isaiah Coe, massive, massive human beings. Yeah, you mentioned he's from IMG Academy, 6'4", 275, verified. He just long arms, everything you want in a D lineman. There's a reason he was the ninth overall prospect in the class of 2024, second D lineman behind LJ McCray, and third in the state of Florida in general. Yeah, what makes him a good candidate to be a breakout player, right? Yes, he can get on the field early and play alongside those studs, but he's not raw, right? He is ready to go from the jump. IMG does a great job of translating guys to get ready to play in major college football, right? And David Stone is no different. He's a guy that Oklahoma and Brent Venables made a priority, even though all the Mel Tucker stuff went on. They still wanted him, and they went on after him hard. Made sure not to let him go and made him sign and close the deal on him to be the gem of their class, a class that was top 10 for Oklahoma and really built, from the inside out very impressively, starting with David Stone. Yeah, this is awesome. And you talk about reasons why translating success to the field, right? For Oklahoma, going from the Big 12 to the SEC is going to be interiorly, right? They lose a lot on the offensive line. Yes, they're doing some stuff to figure that out, but defensive line, and David Stone is no exception. There's some dogs there, some guys that can really compete with some damn good maulers in the run game in the SEC. And you love that, a guy that can come in right away and play impact. And obviously, yeah, if he has a breakout season or guys around him have breakout season, right, you love that for Oklahoma and Brent Venables, and you saw it coming together defensively last year after a really bad year one of Brent Venables. That year three leap is going to be massive, I believe, for Oklahoma's defense.
So you think do you think David Stone like gets not starting now, but like how much playing time do you think David Stone can get in this lineup?
Well, they seem to rotate their defensive linemen. They had, five guys over 100 snaps, right? And just the interior guys, multiple guys on the edge, also over 150 snaps. So, I mean, they rotate, and that's a good thing to have. It's a good problem to have, right? And you need fresh bodies if you're going to withstand the wear and tear of this new schedule that the SEC is creating. I like it. Is it going to lead to, 5, 6, 7 sacks as a freshman? No. Their leading sack guy last year was Ethan Downs with 4.5. And that's not realistic in year one. That's not what a successful season or a breakout season for David Stone's going to look like. You're going to see him make plays in the run game, but also just creating pressure, creating sacks for other guys. But also, like Brent Venables, he can do blitzing and stunting with an athlete like David Stone. is also a way they can really find his way on the field in third down pressure packages, really getting after it. I mean, if you set the line at 1.5 sacks, I would probably go, it'd probably be around there. I think that's a really good line, but that's not going to be where his impact is made. You're going to see it down to down with David Stone.
Let's talk about Cam Coleman. He's like David Stone, one of the two true freshmen that we're actually talking about today. And the reason why I'm talking about him is because I think he can make an immediate impact on this Auburn team. Like, is he not like when he walks in the building? Is there not a very good chance that he's the best wide receiver on this team?
He is. And if he is what we think he is, what I think he is, what everyone thinks he is, he is. I mean, their leading wide receiver last year had 347 yards. I get it. I
Is it
get
a
it.
wide
Peyton
receiver
Thorne was
problem though, or was it also a quarterback problem?
it can be both. I think it can be both. Hugh Freeze can scheme up open guys, right? You have to have playmakers go make some plays. And Cam Coleman is that. He's everything you want in a wide receiver. 6'3", 180 pounds as a true freshman, number 3 overall in the 2024 recruiting class. And to be honest, if it wasn't a guy named Jeremiah Smith, who was the number 1 overall player in the whole class of 2024, he'd be getting so much more buzz because of how good he is, how dominant he is. But you're seeing these true freshman wide receivers come in to major college football and make plays right away. And I believe Cam Coleman is no different, which is exactly why he's on this list.
Yeah, so other receivers in this receiving room that are notable. I'll start with Robert Lewis, guy that probably profiles more as like a slot guy, but we know how those Georgia State slot receivers turn out. You're looking at Jamari Thrash from last year, heading over to Louisville. He was very effective. I think Robert Lewis is just as good, just as talented. So he could definitely produce in there. Also, Caleb Burton. If you're a Texas high school football fan, you probably remember him playing for Lake Travis. He went to Ohio State. He transferred what I believe was last year, 2 years
Yep.
ago, uh, to Auburn. So he should be a fairly big name to look out for as well. I It'll just be interesting to see because they never got the quarterback. I don't believe they never got the quarterback. I thought they were gonna get the quarterback, and they just never did. Even
Now, there's still time.
Jordan McLeod just committed today to
Great
Texas State.
get. Great get for Texas State there.
Great, TJ Kin just balling out there per usual. But that's a guy that I kind of expected to go to Auburn. Like and Hugh Freeze can do a lot with a little, right? But when you can't do anything, not your hope for Auburn's like, can this offensive line improve? From last year, you thought you had a good offensive line with all these transfers. Turns out G5 transfers don't always translate. Even high level G5 transfers. So it'll be really, really interesting. But Cam Coleman is an absolute freak. He is a freak. If you ask me, he's the best wide receiver in this class. Uh, I'm sure other people have varying opinions on that. You look at a guy like Ryan Williams, who's like just turned 17. You could also think like, okay, well, like Ryan Williams is also a stud, and you look at his age. To me, to me, Cam Coleman is just a freak. I mean, I like Jeremiah Smith. I do. I like him a lot. In fact, I like Jeremiah Smith. So I think like this wide receiver class is insanely loaded at the top end. It is so loaded. It is crazy, right? Jeremiah Smith, Cam Coleman, Ryan Williams, TJ Moore, Micah Hudson, Ryan Wingo, Mike Matthews, Brian Wesco. Uh, did I say TJ
Gat
Moore? I mean, just
Gatlin Bear, a guy we're not going to see for a couple years, who's a freak as well.
yeah, Ashton Bethel Roman. I mean, Bryce Kane, who's on Auburn also. It is a loaded wide receiver class, man. So I happen to have the opinion that Cam Coleman is the best. If you watch, make sure you watch his highlights against IMG Academy when uh Central High School from Alabama played against IMG. Cam Coleman he's only 180 pounds, 190 pounds. He looked like he was 220 pounds out there. He absolutely bullied kids. He's physical. He's great catch radius, great hands, great route running ability. He's got it all, man. He's got it all. And he profiles pretty similar to Jeremiah Smith size wise, just Probably a little thinner than Jeremiah Smith, but absolute menace. This kid is absolute menace. Any other
He's the
thoughts
guy
on
that
Cam
went.
Coleman?
Oh yeah, I love Cam Coleman. He's the guy that went, right at Elias Robinson, not only in that game, but also in Under Armour All American, and everything that happened there. Cam Coleman was unguardable, which obviously those events are built for wide receivers that can make plays. And he's a guy that's such a mismatch that it was built for him to succeed, but he did. And obviously, no surprise there. I mean, his comp is George Pickens. And I mean, say what you want about him off his head and his antics and all that stuff. He is a freak. And that has to get you excited for Auburn, who is desperate, desperate for a wide receiver one to be an alpha guy like Cam Coleman is. Yeah, I I love it. He's so ready to come in right away and help him, which is why he's on this list. Because yes, Jeremiah Smith's really good. Yes, Ryan Williams, all these guys, but like who's gonna come in and be the savior for their offense? It's gonna be Cam Coleman. If you tell me a freshman receiver is gonna have over 850 yards, I had to bank on one, it'd be Cam Coleman because of what he's gonna mean to that offense. And that's 500 more yards than any other receiver had on Auburn last year. So that's to me, that's a massive success for Cam Coleman and offense. He's also only 17 years old, too. I believe he turns 18 in August. So he's still a young guy as well, developing physically, still growing into
Jeez.
that body. Yeah.
Jeez, man.
There,
That is
there's also
crazy.
there's also just big impact for Auburn in general. In-state win, getting a guy like Cam Coleman to flip him from A&M, but also to hold off Bama and everyone else who wanted a piece of him as well. Yeah, this is awesome for Hugh Freeze. It's very telling what they want to do. If they can sell Cam Coleman right on what they want to do offensively with the quarterback position and pushing the ball down the field, you can sell me as well. And obviously, the transfer portal window is not closed yet for the full season. It's still going to open up in the spring. We'll see what happens there. Obviously, I'm not too, you can't bank on your quarterback to come in the spring, but regardless, so whether it's going to be Walker White or Hank Brown or, I guess Peyton Thorne again, I still think Cam Coleman can make those guys better than they are.
I mean, is there a good quarterback left in the transfer portal? I can't think of any.
Well, you
Maybe,
could you you could damn well see a guy like Dylan Longnerham or Jalen Milroe. One of those Alabama guys might leave. A Ohio State guy might leave. Michigan guy might like. There's all these quarterback competitions that are going to happen in the spring, and if the writing's on the wall on where it's heading, you might get yourself out of there. But also, if you're Auburn, you don't want the second scraps of your rivals, right? You want to be a guy that gets your first option. Obviously, it didn't happen this year in the portal or even on your roster. We'll see where Walker White comes in. I don't think he's ready to come in right away, but regardless of Cam Coleman, it's just he's incredible. He is incredible, and he's
yeah.
also, he's
I know
what
Sam Jackson committed to Auburn, but is he even playing quarterback for them or is he playing receiver?
he'll be a receiver for Auburn, which is the right move for him. He's a
Okay,
freak athlete.
that's what I
Quarterback was
thought.
not going to be his future. And
Yeah.
Cam Coleman's a guy. He grew up in Phoenix City, right? That's if you know the Alabama geography, that's 20 minutes from Auburn Stadium, right? That is right by
Yeah.
Auburn, and Opelika right there.
Why didn't Logan Fife go to Auburn?
Yeah. Or how about a guy like who's our UNLV Jade Maeva? Jade Maeva. And anyone.
Like I'm
Dante
looking at
Moore.
like Blake Shapen, I'm looking at AJ Swan, Clay Millen. I mean, Chandler Morris. I'm looking at a gigantic list of guys that went to other schools that I don't know if Auburn tried, but man, I really hope in the time that Cam Coleman is in college football that he has a quarterback that can throw the football because he's so good. He's so. Let's move on. Let's talk about Miller Moss. I mean, the conversation surrounding Miller Moss has kind of come up pretty recently as their bowl game, and his absolute unbelievable performance that he had in that game. He was absurd,
Yeah.
CD.
Yeah. 23 for 33, 372 yards, 6 touchdowns, an interception. He also played fantastic in mop up duty against Stanford, Nevada, and San Jose State. Yeah, a guy in a quarterback room that was full of other talents, other 5 stars. Caleb Williams, who's obviously a stud, right? Heisman Trophy winner, first round pick, first overall pick, probably, right? And then obviously 5-star Malachi Nelson was the talk of the town as well. to be the future of the quarterback position, it's Miller Moss. That's the last man standing there, and he's no slouch in his own right. 76 overall recruit back in 2021, 12th QB, right in that class, sixth in California. He's an in-state guy, which you love for Lincoln Riley there. Redshirt junior. I believe he was recruited there by the previous staff, right? Not a Lincoln Riley handpicked guy, but hey, he fended off everybody else. He even fended off Will Howard, right? That came over, was supposed to be a USC Trojan. And then all of a sudden the bowl game happens and it was like, well, we can't skip out on Miller Moss now. And yeah, I love it. But he was already a good candidate, to be a breakout player. Did he already break out? Maybe. But also we wanted to talk about him because he was fantastic and the national love surrounding USC is not there right now. A lot of it's on the defense, but people forget that Miller Moss is a damn good quarterback. Is he going to be Caleb Williams? No. Does he have to be? No. They're replacing, right? They're changing that defense. They're upgrading O-line. They're bringing in Jaquavian Marks, right? They got Zachariah Branch. You
Yeah.
got talent around you. Less than Caleb had probably, but you also have other pieces as a full team and a unit that can lead to more wins.
Yeah, you lose Taj Washington, who was a really productive receiver. You lose Brendan Rice, who's Jared Rice's kid. He's very good. He'll be in the NFL somewhere. I The way Miller Moss played in that game just has me excited, right? And Lincoln Riley, like, have we ever seen him fail a quarterback? Have we ever seen him
Uh,
fail a quarterback? No. We haven't ever seen him fail a quarterback. Lincoln Riley is a stud with quarterbacks. And if he likes Miller Moss, then that means that I do too, right? That means that I like Miller Moss as well. Mario Williams, I believe, transferred out of there. Dorian Singer transferred out of there. But I think it could be just that these young guys, I mean, Zach Branch, we know is a stud, but it could be that Deuce Robinson is just ready to go, you know?
it's also
That's what
like
that could mean.
they're kind of cleaning house there. I don't know if those guys at this point in their career, I don't want to say that they're more name than player, but because they're really talented, they had success at times in their college collegiate career, but they all underperformed last year with Caleb Williams. And it was not really Caleb Williams' fault for the most part. But other than Taj Washington, everybody else kind of really took a step back. And maybe that new blood in there, like you said, Z Branch. Obviously, they're bringing in Xavier Jordan, who's a top wide receiver from the state of California. Maybe as a true freshman, can come in there from Sierra Canyon and really get after it. I love it. I love it from Miller Moss.
Yeah, a sneaky one. D3 wide receiver, Jaden Richardson. I haven't known Lincoln Riley necessarily go get some D3 receivers, but he goes and gets Jaden Richardson from Tufts, 6'3", 210 pounds. So he'll be like a senior, right? So he's not getting him to just get, I think he's getting him to, he's going to be playing, if I had to imagine. So we'll see. We'll see, man. I'm very excited for Miller Moss. Not that this is an upgrade from Caleb Williams by any means, but Miller Moss is kind of a guy, and I think we know that. So if you're asking me, do I think Miller Moss can be very, very, very successful this year? He can absolutely be insanely successful this year. I don't know what the Heisman odds for 2024 are. I'm actually pulling them up right here, seeing what the odds are according to FanDuel Sportsbook. But if I had to imagine, Miller Moss is probably pretty high up there. Yeah, look, he's right around 30 to 1, plus 3,000, right there with Brady Cook, Cade Klubnik, DJU, Avery Johnson, Jackson Arnold. He's right in that tier. I mean, like he's in that breakout tier. So I look, Vegas is high on him, coaches are high on him. I think here on this show, we're pretty high on Miller Moss. Now, will this translate to wins? I don't know. Dan Lynn is looking to improve that defense for sure, the physicality, hopefully, as well. But there's still a lot to be seen, right?
For sure. Now you look at their win totals just released, right? Going over preseason win totals for the Big Ten. They're at 7.5, and they have a tough schedule. Yes, right. They get Penn State, Michigan, Wisconsin. They open with LSU, and they also have Notre Dame out of conference as well. Can't forget about Washington and at UCLA, and maybe an improved Nebraska team as well. It's not an easy schedule in year one in the Big Ten, which is part of the reason why they're at 7.5. But part of it is, some of that uncertainty right around the quarterback position. You lose in Caleb Williams. What happens? What does the breakout season mean for this USC team.
Gosh, like if Miller Moss played at like, well, see, look, I was gonna say if Miller Moss played at Caleb Williams level, they could win 8, 9 games, but they just won 7 games with Caleb Williams like play. But if Miller Moss can break out and this defense can do something with this schedule, like I don't think they're competing for a Big Ten championship, but they are. I think they could look like a respectable opponent for sure.
Yeah, in game one, week one, right? You got to play LSU, and Miller Moss might have to put up 30, 40 points in that game for you to have a chance to win that football game, right? And if you're gonna know quickly, right? If Miller Moss is a guy, and all of a sudden he'll be thrust right into the national conversation, right where he probably belongs this offseason.
And that'll be it for college football's next stars. Will there be a part two? Maybe. Will there be a part three? Well, if there's a part two, there'll probably be a part three. Make sure you guys, if you like the content, like the video, right? That's the rule that we have here. You just follow rules, be a rule follower, right? Just for today. Okay, that'd be awesome. If you're listening on Spotify, we love you too, right? But here's what you can do for us there. You can go give us that 5-star rating, maybe give us a follow. Make sure you guys are emailing us mailbag questions. We're going to start getting those pretty soon here. You guys are going to email us at the Redshirt Sophomore at gmail.com. And you can also DM us on Twitter at the Redshirt Soph. That's just the Redshirt Soph, not the Redshirt Sophomore, just the Redshirt Soph. All right. CD, you got anything for us on the way out?
No, I loved enjoying this. You guys are still watching. Thank you. You guys are the best. Like Matthew said, like, comment, and subscribe. Continue interacting with us. Continue growing our channel. We love it. We're over 200, and we're pushing for our next milestone as well. So, yeah, hope you guys enjoy. We have a lot to talk about this offseason, so stick around for the ride, like Matthew said.
Absolutely. We'll see you in the next one.